Do a quick little walk around of this beauty for you guys. Oh, I love this thing. Even 20 years later, she's just so beautiful. Yeah, start it off right, boys. Oh, yeah, bud. Send it. Yeah. I love this bike. Little exhaust clip for you. Oh my gosh, that will never get old. La di da di da di da di da di da di da. I love this thing. How much do I love this thing? Well, I've owned about 11 motorcycles now, and this is the one that I've held on to the longest. This is the second motorcycle I've ever owned, and it's the only one that I've kept pretty much for the entirety of this channel. So that will tell you guys something. So I am one of the people as well that is in love with this bike, and it's for a variety of reasons. You know, this bike may be old, but sometimes the things that are older are better than the things that are new. And it reaches out to a certain kind of people. It's definitely not for everybody, but it's something that I love, and it's something a lot of motorcycles love when they're on this bike. So, the first thing that you will notice with this bike, it is old. So it does not have any technology on it, which, I mean, that's what I like. I feel like motorcycles today, they do too much, you know? There are some safety features you need. The one thing I think this bike would be great with is ABS, right? But pretty much other than that, I don't want anything. I don't want traction control. I really don't want wheelie control. I definitely don't want power modes. And that's what all these new bikes have. And I have got a lot of friends that ride, and a lot of people have newer bikes, right? What is the problem with that? They're all starting to have issues now that they're getting like 5 to 8 years old, where these sensors for the technology on the bikes are starting to go. This kid just paid $1,200 to replace a sensor on his motorcycle. I mean, that's insane, dude. I paid like $5 grand for this bike 6 years ago. That's literally over a fifth of the price of this bike. About a quarter of the price of this bike. For a sensor. I mean, it's unbelievable. So that is one of my favorite things about this bike, is the lack of technology. But a lot of bikes don't have the technology, right? So how does this bike separate itself from the other bikes? The raw power, especially the mid-range of this bike, is something that is unmatched. And I think it's the reason, like I said earlier, let's go nice and slow through the turn here. La-di-da, di-da-di-da, di-da-di-da. Ready? Watch me drag knee. Oh my gosh, this lean angle. Just kidding. But you know, there was a video of this bike up against a Ducati Panigale, like a $30,000 Panigale, and the Gixxer actually won. And I think the reason for that, you know, was mainly because the mid-range of this bike is something that people don't really understand. You know, it's almost V-twin power in the mid-range, and that makes a huge difference when you're on the track. All the new bikes, yeah, they've got this this horsepower at the top end, and, you know, and all this stuff. Great, but if you're not at the top end of the power band the whole time while you're riding, you're not really using the full amount of the bike. And the power to weight ratio, this is one of the best power to weight ratio motorcycles ever built in the history of motorcycles. And some bikes, they have an it feeling, you know? They either have it or they don't. And this is one of those bikes that has that feeling. Same thing with dirt, you know what I mean? No matter what kind of bike, you will know if it has character, if it has a certain feel when you're riding. You feel alive. And some bikes have it, some bikes don't. I had a KTM 200 dirt bike, right? It was great in the woods. Super easy to ride, but it was missing something. It didn't have that fun factor. It didn't feel alive. It didn't make me feel alive. There's no memorable rides that I ever had with that bike. I don't ever look back and think of like, oh man, this ride was so much fun. I didn't ever feel that with that bike. And I feel like that's what a lot of the bikes of today are missing, is character. And that's why so many people, even these popular motovloggers, they're still coming back to bikes like this GSXR because of how fun and how raw they are. Now, you may have to do some work to get them to where you really want them. After I put a Bazaar ZFI on this bike, the throttle input is butter. It is so smooth, man. Because before I had it, it wasn't bad, but it felt like an old motorcycle. You could feel it. It was a little choppy, it wasn't super smooth. But after I changed and put a Bazaar ZFI on this thing, dude, oh my gosh. The throttle is super responsive, super smooth. It felt like a brand new bike when I put it on. And the other thing I have on here, like I showed you guys at the beginning of this video, is... oh, that exhaust, man. I put a race fit exhaust on this thing. It is loud, it's obnoxious, just like me, and that's what makes me love it. Oh, I just... oh, is that not the greatest sound? It's so peaceful to me. Like when I ride home from work, man, it's late at night, and that's all I hear. There's no cars on the road. It's just me cruising through on a nice back road, and I just hear that exhaust, and I look at this bike, and I look at the speedo, and I feel like I'm in a video game, and that's the feeling that this bike gives me. Now, like I said, there are a ton of pros to this bike. Let me get into some of the things that aren't the best. One, you gotta be moving with this bike. Like right now, I'm getting away with this, you know, 40 miles an hour, only because it's cold. It's like 30-something degrees out. In the summer, if I'm in second gear doing 45, this thing is at 200 degrees, the fan comes on, and it pisses me off because I don't want my bike to be hot. You know, granted, I could be on better roads, but the problem is, where I live, there's so much traffic, especially on the weekends, with all these different riders. And so no matter what I do, I get stuck behind somebody, and I get stuck in a line of cars, so I can't pass anybody, and the bike itself gets hot. So if you're on really slow back roads, you know, it might not be the best. The bike itself for a 1000 is a little bit smaller, so if you're a bigger guy, this might be a little bit of a small bike for you. It fits me perfectly. I'm 5'8", about 160 pounds. I fit really comfortable on this bike. I've been riding it for like an hour. I don't have any pain of anything. It's almost closer to a 600cc frame than it is a 1000. And that's the other con of this bike. As we saw with Gixxer Bra, his frame on his K5 Gixxer actually had a crack in it, right? And he wheelies that bike a lot and really beats it hard. Unfortunately, because they made this bike so light, they used a weaker material, and because it's smaller, it's weak in certain areas, and so the frame is prone to the frame can be prone to cracking if you're cracking wheelies on it all the time, and you know, you're really just beating the crap out of it. They have braces to prevent this, and it's only certain models that really have this issue. But it is a big flag you got to be aware of, is, you know, if you crack your frame, the bike is done. So that is something that's probably the biggest drawback of this bike. But those are really the only two negative things that I could think of about this bike. When I hopped on this bike, I felt like I found myself. I would go out for a ride, and I'm like, this is me. When I'm on this bike, that's who I am. It helped me find myself. I was in college when I got this thing. And I had some, like I said in other videos, I've had some crazy ups and downs in my life. And through the best of the best and the worst of the worst, this bike has been there for it. And I think that's part of the reason I love this bike so much, is it's seen everything, man. And we've gone on this crazy adventure of life together. And we're both still here kicking, still doing our thing. And that's kind of the hope, you know. I would like to keep this bike for as long as I can, man. If I can keep it forever, you know, maybe I will. That's the goal, anyway. That's kind of my review of the K5 GSXR 1000. If you guys like this video. Let me know by hitting the like button. If you guys have ridden one of these bikes, comment down below and tell me what you think of it. And subscribe if you have not already. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace!